a while.
Yeah, he had some fantasy relevant weeks, so that could be looked at as a glass half full.
All right, boys. I pressed the big red button. We got way too many topics. The NFL just so generous to us this year, especially the last few hours, few minutes, few days, few weeks, whichever way you want to look at it. We're going to hit on a bunch of that tonight. Guys, let's get right into it.
Goat district, you know, Pope listens. Dynasty, a religion for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting paid. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizon, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be trading. And I always be trading. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
What is up, Fantasyland? We are back in the district, and as I said before we pressed the intro, man, the NFL is just dropping the goodness this week, guys. Today, smashing, blowing up our minds once again. As you see, a happy Colts fan over here with Matty Ice at the Commands in Indy. We're going to touch on all that tonight. First, guys, let's give one of these to Dan. Dan living the retired life. At what concert's he at tonight, Theo?
I believe he might be at a Journey concert, but I'm not sure what band, but I think it might be Journey.
I fucking love it. I should have had the clip ready for that. Anyways, it's all good, man. It's all good. Mario, welcome back, brother. Welcome back to the district. We had to have you back on this week.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here, and I'll try to get something right this time.
When I scheduled Mario, he said, "Well, try to have me on this date because I think the Tyreek Hill trade is going to go down the day before." So you're off by a couple hours. That was
glad we had that one right.
You nailed it. You guys nailed it, man. Like the perfect synchronized swimming there between you two scheduling that. I mean, guys, there's so much goodness to get into. Last Theo, the three of us, you, Dan, and I, were on with Billy and a shark-infested water draft. Remind me the site that we drafted on and where the peeps can find it.
We did a 24-round best ball draft on Play FFWC. It was hosted by Billy Muzio from Full Time Fantasy. It was a great draft. Adam Krautwurst was in this draft. Dan, JD, myself. We had a ton of very, very good drafters. Billy drafted as well. Bradley Stadler. You go down the list. It was a great draft. There's some great analysts and some great players. And it was a really big time mental exercise to do that 24-rounder. There was no kickers, so it's an interesting format. We highly recommend you check it out. But it was if anybody's looking to see the YouTube of it, check out the Full Time Fantasy podcast, Play FFWC, and Billy Muzio should have it all linked. But it was awesome. I mean, I liked my draft. I don't know what you thought, JD, but it was definitely tough towards the end. It's a wide receiver heavy format, so I tried to get as many good receivers as possible, and I feel like I like my wide receiver build.
Yeah, I was trying to I got to say, man, I was fumbling around on that platform. I got to admit, I've only done one slow draft on that platform. Billy invited me to a slow draft that they were doing. And then he asked me to do this live one. And I thought I was able to maneuver it on my screens and stuff, but it was really difficult for me to maneuver it. I figured it out kind of more towards the end, but you know what? It was super fun. I learned a lot just because of the guys that were in that draft. And like you said, Theo, it's a different format than, the usual underdogs and FFPCs that we talk about on the show. 3 receiver starters, like you said, no kicker, but there are defenses. Just a really good draft, 24 rounds. Go check it out, guys. Strong recommend if you do best ball or even thinking about it. Even just for redraft, you'll get a lot of tidbits from some really sharp players.
And if you want to see the board itself, Jared Smola and Mike Schopp from Draft Sharks, also 2 very, very sharp guys, were also in this draft. And I believe Jared or Draft Sharks posted the board itself. So if you don't want to watch us, you don't want to watch the YouTube or listen to the podcast, you can just go look at the board. And I think that'll be helpful as well. But at the end of the day, Tyreek Hill gets traded a day after the draft. So the board will be a change in many, many formats.
My Herbert over Mahomes pick looking a little sexier now than it was when you guys were calling me out on it.
Looking sharp. So I'm excited tonight. We have Mario on. If anybody does not follow him, he's a great follow on Twitter. His articles on Rotowire are very, very good, and he's very frequent with his writing. And he also is putting out a ton of very useful podcasts on Rotowire. I see you have multiple people you're podcasting with right now, Mario.
Yeah, I mostly work with my colleague John McKechnie. We do, I guess, weekly for as long as the foreseeable future. For I don't know. I guess we might have done it like every week for the past year, and I didn't even notice it yet. We might just do it year round all the time, and then during the season, or probably at some point in the summer, more likely, we get an expanded roster at that point and start doing it. I think at least 5 days a week, but I always do it once a week with John.
Awesome. Yeah, it's we highly recommend it. It's a good one to subscribe to. They dropped
Thank you very much, by the way.
Tyreek Hill reaction one today, which I'm looking forward to listening to.
Yeah, guys, go check that out. I've already gone through, I think, 3/4 or even a bit more of that, and just some good tidbits. So go check that out. After you've listened to this one, you can download and subscribe to Mario's show over there at Rotowire, and he's at the Posting Scout.
The Posting Scout, yes.
Yeah. On Twitter. Explain that to me real quick.
It's kind of making fun of both myself and I guess it would be Matt Miller, but just that general archetype of the NFL scout who is on the internet and posts too much. And I think we both qualify, and I was kind of like following his at NFL Draft Scout kind of aesthetic lead there.
Nice. I like when there's a little story behind it, right, Theo? Makes it a little more fun.
I like to know the inside joke too.
There you go. All right, guys, let's get into this one. We already talked about it. It's hard not to start with Miami, Kansas City. Huge monster move. Actually, you know what, Theo? I don't know if you have the deets. If not, I'll pull it up while I throw out the first question on this one. But Tyreek Hill going to Miami in a monster move. I don't think anyone expected this. I don't know if you guys have any other info on that, but I didn't see any of that anywhere. Just last night, I joked that I did an underdog before I went to sleep and stacked, the Hill, Mahomes, and Kelsey right out the gate. So those hurt a bit. I'll go to you first. Sorry.
So the trade was Tyreek Hill goes to Miami. Kansas City receives the first round pick, a late one, 29 overall. They also get a second round pick, 50th overall, a fourth round pick, and then they get fourth and sixth round picks in next year's draft. So they got 5 draft picks, but only one day 1 selection and a day 2 selection. So it wasn't. I don't think it was an overwhelming payment. I think I've seen some people taking Kansas City should have gotten a lot more. Some people have said, it's a great day for Kansas City to get all those draft picks for a guy that might have left next year anyway. Any way you cut it, whichever stance you take, it was still just a massive, significant move. And it seemed to kind of come out of left field too. There wasn't like a whole lot of Tyreek Hill's getting traded all last week, which I think that was kind of the shocking thing is just how quickly things move this offseason, even with like Deshaun Watson going to Cleveland, where, we were thinking New Orleans, Carolina, and then all of a sudden it just becomes Cleveland. And now, you have Tyreek Hill, basically the trade just happens so quickly. I mean, I think that was the most shocking thing for it. We've seen Devontae Adams get traded, so we've already seen a huge wide receiver get moved, but it was just kind of how quickly this happened. For me, that was the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, the Devontae thing at least took like a week to brew up, and this thing, I didn't keep, stopwatch track of it, but it felt like it was only like 20 minutes or something that whoever it was, Schefter or Rappaport, I guess both of them probably were saying like, hey, the Jets, Dolphins, they're talking to the Chiefs, and didn't take long after that. Blindsided me totally. I guess you can understand it easily enough for both teams. I mean, the Dolphins, they're giving Tua a really good shot here, even with a bad offensive line. I think with receivers like Hill and Jalen Waddle, no excuses at all. Whereas before he could have had an excuse, maybe a little bit of an excuse if he kept struggling. That's no longer the case. And then the Chiefs, it's just got to be a money issue. Like I don't know if there was anything they could have done to avoid it, especially after they had to pay Pat Mahomes his extension. But basically, you don't get rid of a player like Tyreek Hill unless the money's kind of forcing you, because you can't replace him with whatever your savings are.
So keeping this, because we could go a million directions. I mean, this is a very interesting trade. He's now what, the highest paid, or the highest paid wide receiver ever, right? In the NFL, 120 million. Is that what I saw?
That was like a 4-year, 120 million figure, right? That's weird. So I heard, or I saw on Twitter initially something like 3 for 75. So I don't know if there's conditional payments or something in there somewhere. But yeah, suffice to say, it was a big number, big enough that it convinced the Chiefs to let go of a guy that you can barely define them without him, and yet they made that move.
So let me ask you, like, kind of going from a macro and then moving in, where do you see the power shift move now? Because this affects two different divisions in the AFC. Obviously, it affects a powerhouse in KC. And we kind of saw this Miami team sneaking up and building slowly and then making a huge splash. So where do you see the ripple effect happen in these divisions or in the AFC?
So Tyreek is a player that the Chiefs can't replace. It's just impossible. But Mahomes, if he's as good as we think he is, if he's, top 2 or the best quarterback in the league, then he should be able to stay pretty dangerous as long as they get somebody like Chris Olave or Jameson Williams with that first round pick, because I like Mecole Hardman, but I think he's more like a good third pass catcher and a good passing offense. And I think that he's good as like a downfield decoy, I guess. Like he's the kind of deep threat who, if the defense doesn't take him seriously, he can make them pay for it. But I think when you go from Tyreek Hill to the next guy, you need someone who can actually threaten consistently upfield. And players like Olave and Jameson Williams, I think, are more in that category. Like they're guys who both have the speed to make the defense pay and kind of like the route running ability to threaten pretty much every play that they're out there from a variety of routes on the outside. So I think the Chiefs can still stay really dangerous if they pick one of those receivers basically and get them up to speed quickly. But even if they do, there's no doubt about it. All of the Chargers, Broncos, Raiders gained ground on them with this, and that's just the fact. I don't know if they can really change that particular part of it. And in the Dolphins' case, I don't know. I don't like Mike McDaniel might be okay. I don't really know where he's headed. I can't tell what kind of coach he is exactly, and he could be a good coach and still fail with the Dolphins with how dysfunctional sometimes their front office and ownership can be. But with players like these, I don't know. It's kind of, even with a bad offensive line, and maybe even a bad quarterback, it's like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Gesicki there. It's going to be tough to cover him with Hill's speed on the field. They could be kind of competitive, especially if the Bills have just an off year for some reason. I think, by the way, the Patriots are kind of on the downswing either way. I don't really like the way their roster is headed. So Dolphins, if they don't at the very least get a wild card berth, it would be pretty disappointing. But at the same time, I don't really see them as like a serious playoff team.
Theo, does this worry you for KC pieces? Like I saw our buddy Swag, put out a tweet saying Kelsey is a trade right now, is a sell. Are you worried about this KC offense, like fantasy wise? I'm talking fantasy players. Is there a sell anywhere in there? Are you worried about that offense as a whole?
I feel like if that's the sentiment, then Kelsey is probably a buy. If the market wants to sell Travis Kelsey, I usually am taking the opposite approach, and I'm trying to get those guys cheap. I think that Travis Kelsey, I think that it's a very safe bet that he's going to be a top 3 tight end. And I think that there's a chance that he's tight end 1 overall again. I think we'd probably put that as a, 30 to 40% chance, something higher than 25% chance of him being tight end 1 overall now. I think he's going to get peppered with targets. You also have to factor in the fact that it doesn't seem like a big fantasy thing, but Byron Pringle was lost. He signed with another team. Demarcus Robinson signed with another team. They get Juju Smith-Schuster, which we were all very, very happy about the landing spot. It's an ideal landing spot for Juju, especially now. But it's still a free agent signing, and free agent wide receivers don't usually come and set the world on fire. So Travis Kelsey is about as sure a thing as it gets in terms of a guy that Pat Mahomes is going to pepper with targets. So from a fantasy perspective, I don't think this really moves anything for Kelsey. You could make an argument, like Mario said, it's impossible to replace Tyreek Hill stylistically. So maybe the entire offense as a whole takes a step down. Maybe there's potentially less red zone opportunity and that sort of thing. But it doesn't change anything for me with Travis Kelsey at all.
What about Mahomes? Like, does it bring it down your ranking, guys, at all with Mahomes?
Well, I think for me, Josh Allen's QB1 overall, and if there was any kind of trepidation with that, and there was still some Mahomes QB1, I think that it's a surefire Josh Allen QB1 overall right now. I love Mahomes, but I think Allen is just the safest bet right now for QB1 overall.
Shout out to Wheeler. Sorry, guys, that was my mistake. I dropped all the marketing and stuff. I threw that out there with the 9:30 time that we usually rock. So I apologize, guys, that we're on early tonight. Hopefully you guys catch it. You can go back and start over. And shout out to Wheeler, Joey Brown, always in the chat. We appreciate you guys. And Matt disagreeing a bit with Mario. He's liking the McCole Hardman, but I'm with Mario there. I've had him on my rosters enough time the last few years. Dan and I on some redrafts, some big tournaments, kind of feeling like we didn't get our money's worth on him. And then let's is there anyone
I just want
else?
to see where's Mario at on Mahomes? If just initial QB ranking.
Yeah,
for redraft.
Yeah, I think it's got to be a downgrade for him. But yeah, I would also say that it is it's treading water for Kelsey. So if his price dropped, I think he's a buy then.
Who climbs ahead of Mahomes, if anyone? Kev seems to think Lamar.
I wouldn't. I love Lamar, but I think Greg Roman is definitely one of the worst offensive coordinators in the league. So I'm kind of pessimistic there, even if their offensive line gets better, even with the running backs back to hopefully help him out a little bit. I'm concerned for Lamar. Josh Allen is not the running threat that Lamar or maybe a couple other guys are, but he's a lot more frequently utilized that way than Patrick Mahomes. And unlike Mahomes, Josh Allen, I think, has a loaded surrounding cast right now. So, Josh Allen. And, I don't think there's anyone else that I have up there. So probably Allen at 1 and then Mahomes and a group of maybe just himself in the second tier, but a second tier, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the way to look at it. I think that when you start talking about QB2, I think there's going to be some people giving different answers right now. I just think it's kind of Allen, then a slight tier break.
What about CH, guys? Joey Brown asking about CH. Theo, what do you think about the backfields? Actually, I want to ask about the backfields in both these offenses, Miami and KC. Are they ones are we avoiding, or is CH kind of still a buy at his value?
I don't.
Sorry.
You go start out with this one, Mario.
Well, I was going to say, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire can run in skilled way. Like, I don't know if he can take on the volume, but I think when he gets the ball as a runner, he's pretty good in that offense. I don't know what to make of his injuries as they've piled up. And more importantly, I don't have any idea what the Chiefs think about it. Like, if the Chiefs are going into this draft thinking, we got to get somebody to take the load off of Clyde Edwards-Helaire because we can't count on Clyde Edwards-Helaire to stay healthy, they would kind of be reasonable to conclude that, I guess. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is 5'7", 204 or something like that. He's not even supposed to be a true workhorse like all along. Even when we were high on him, it wasn't even in theory supposed to be a workhorse kind of player. It's more like 12 carries, 4 or 5 catches. And the catches have been the problem too in a lot of even aside from the durability, there hasn't been that pass catching production with Edwards-Helaire. And I know this doesn't matter to anyone who's invested in Edwards-Helaire and kind of been disappointed by him, but I don't think it's his fault. I think like when defenses see him on the field, they make sure there's a linebacker to watch his route when they drop it off to him. So I see people wondering all the time, like, how is it that every time Clyde Edwards-Helaire catches a pass, he's getting tackled after 5 yards right away, and then Darrell Williams does it 6 times in a game and running after the catch for 10 yards, no problem every time. There's no one in frame. It's like, yeah, I don't know what to do about it to fix it, but the defense cares when Edwards-Helaire is on the field, and they don't when those other guys are out there. So they either need to figure out some way to make the defense pay for watching Edwards-Helaire, and since it didn't work the last 2 years, I don't know what changes there, or they have to get that much more going on the ground, and it's like, I don't know how much his frame can take up there. So I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is in a difficult spot, and I think he's a good player, but I do worry about them practically utilizing him as a pass catcher, and as a runner, I worry that they, kind of reasonably are worried that his frame can't take 15 carries a game.
So shout out to Wheeler in the chat. It brings up Rojo. I saw the Rojo to KC rumors as well. I think I've also seen them being linked to drafting a running back potentially in the second round or third round. So I think there could end up being some competition. CH would not be one that I would go out and try to actively buy in Dynasty. I've seen some sharp players buy him low in some leagues I'm in, guys that I respect their opinions on, buy him low. But it would have to be pretty low for me. I think he's the kind of guy you might get burned trading like not trying to put a number on it, but I wouldn't go offering like, the 107 for him right now. I would kind of let things shake out. But I think I've seen some people trade second rounders for him. That's how the market is very low on CEH and Dynasty right now. In redraft, I've drafted him in an NFFC best ball draft. I drafted him in like the 7th round. I think that's a reasonable place to take a stab at if you're doing early best balls. He's occasionally falling out like into the, the 90s, 80s. Like he's going pretty close to 100 in some of these best ball drafts. So I think the market's pretty low for CH. This certainly, the only argument for this would be it might create more touches for him. But I don't like we said, a running back like CEH, you'd want him to have opportunities in the red zone and green zone to kind of pay off big time. And unless some things really shake out, the offense as a whole probably won't be as strong. So I wouldn't recommend going out and buying him. Now the Miami backfield's super interesting to me right now because I am interested in Chase Edmonds.
Mostert.
I'm not as interested in Mostert. I think Mostert is familiarity with the system.
Does he loses with Hill coming in? No, because he's kind of gadgety a bit.
I think I don't know if either one necessarily loses. I think it's like Edmonds is the one that they put money into. They gave him like 6.5 guaranteed. They paid him like 2 years, 12. And I think Edmonds is younger. He's certainly the better receiver. He's the running back that they brought in first. They brought in Mostert second. I know that shouldn't really be a factor in, but Edmonds seems like the person that they targeted. They needed a running back. They went out and got Edmonds. And I'm a fan of the situation. I think Edmonds could end up being one of these guys that could be a RB2 or a useful flex in this offense. I mean, you have 2 of the fastest wide receivers in the league now, and you have a tight end who can stretch the field. I believe in Mike McDaniel's ability to scheme. I mean, Edmonds should have opportunities with his touches. He's a guy that's, and I was talking to Mario about this in the pre-show. The fact that they traded away all these draft picks is also a great thing for Edmonds. They don't have a draft pick until the end of the 3rd round now.
They're pretty safe. Yeah, they're pretty safe.
So I think you're gonna. I think that was one of the fears was they're gonna have just some crowded, backfield, and they'll take one of these guys in like the 2nd or 3rd round potentially. That ship has sailed. It's Edmonds and Mostert. You can get Edmonds still pretty cheap, and you can get Mostert dirt cheap. So I have some Edmonds in Dynasty. I'd like to get a little more, and I think he's the kind of player. I don't think he's not a league winner type, but I think he will pay off at his current ADP, and I think he'll rise up a little bit. maybe into that dead zone as the summer goes along. What do you think, Mario?
Yeah, Edmonds is pretty interesting. Like, he seems like he's a pretty good player. I think both him and James Conner played well with the Cardinals last year. So the way those two split it was Edmonds taking most of the passing down work, or some safe majority of it, and Conner getting more like the short yardage, red zone stuff, whatever. With the Dolphins, I think there's going to be a split similar in that, like, I think Mostert might be there. Mostert could actually start at running back, and it would be one of those like ceremonial things where he starts because their base loadout is, they want to have a run play action threat on the field, and they want to establish that, outside run threat with Mostert and try to get the defense worrying about the speed both underneath and vertically, try to get them off balance. And then Edmonds is the one who's probably going to play upwards of 2/3 of the actual snaps, because anytime there's a route for the running back, it's going to be Edmonds on the field. So he might be off the bench technically, but he should lead them in snaps, and he should get almost a monopoly on the pass catching work there, particularly with the offensive line being kind of concerning. That's a good thing. If he can get a lot of targets, especially in PPR, you wouldn't really care if he's struggling to average 4 yards a carry.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys, you ever date that girl, like she's really attractive, you're totally into her, but like she wears that perfume that just, like the super flowery one you're just not into because it reminds you of your mom or something. I feel like Edmonds is that girl. Like, what is he giving you? At most, he's giving you 2 top 12 weeks in 2020. We've seen him in a pretty good offense in Arizona. I mean, yeah, we saw Duke Johnson look good in Miami at the end of last year, right? Which is encouraging. And now you've got Tyreek Hill opening it up with Waddle. So yeah, I totally get that. Edmonds, to me, I just don't know if he's that guy that's going to do it. He gave you what, 5 last year, one top 12, 5 top 24s. I don't know. He just doesn't do it for me. When I'm drafting, he doesn't offer me the upside that I'm looking for.
But I think the price is already baked in, so I don't think you're having to overpay for him.
Yeah, Edmonds' price probably is going to go up a bit, right? Like, I guess I don't know what all the sites are showing right now, but I just was looking at the NFFC stuff. Not that many drafts.
Who'd you rather have, Mario? Chase Edmonds or Miles Sanders?
Probably Edmonds in PPR at the very least. And maybe in standard too.
Yeah, I think I might be on Team Edmonds right now. I was a big Miles Sanders guy before, but I think that's a guy that could get hurt in the NFL draft. Plus the fact that it's crowded with Gainwell and Scott, and a coach that's shown a willingness to use multiple backs. We also just don't know what Mike McDaniel is going to run offensively. Like, I think there's been a lot of people who think he's just going to be some Shanahan clone. I don't necessarily see that. I think he's going to kind of do his own thing.
It seems like they're going to kind of like a spread almost kind of theory. They have Cedric Wilson there too.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Parker is still around. I believe is he still under contract, Devontae Parker?
I would expect them to move him, but he is. Yeah.
So they're deep at receiver, and they have 2 guys where they're going to try their best to manufacture Yak. Try to get. I think it's going to be a lot of touches. We saw how he used Deebo Samuel, but I think it could be I think getting away from Shanahan, things could open up more. And I think that McDaniel's like a big wild card for this whole situation. Like, I think that you can keep things more simple for Tua by running some short 8-out routes, using some screens, some sweeps, and you've got 2 wide receivers who can take it to the house on any touch. I mean, we're not even talking about Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle had 104 catches last year, and we saw him in the draft JD and I were in. He went like 17 overall. It's a wide receiver heavy format, but Jalen Waddle, people were starting to take in the 2nd round, and now they've added Tyreek Hill. It's just scary. I mean, I personally think it's either the best wide receiver combination in the NFL or right there with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but they're absolutely loaded at the top 2 wide receiver positions. So I don't know what the offense is going to look like, but I think it'll certainly be exciting.
Yeah, totally, man. I'm pumped to see it. I like Tua this year as a buy low, just without any of these additions. So now it's just pure money, especially if you got him early in these best balls, and you made moves for him early in these super flexes. Guys, let's go from one loaded offense to a not so loaded offense. When you're talking receivers, let's go to my Colts, man. I'm pretty happy about Matty Ice ending up there. We'll touch on the rookies and the NFL draft and how all these moves are affecting that in a bit. So stay tuned for that, guys. Smash the like, smash the subscribe. You know the drill. Show your support. That's all we ask. We bring the winners, bring guys like Mario here to drop the knowledge, the goodness. Let's talk Matty Ice, guys. Who we liking in this Indy offense? Obviously, Pittman is coming off of a Wentz season, so he's got to be happy. As a Colts fan, I'm happy that we dodged the Baker Mayfield possibilities, behind that offensive line. Mario, I'll go to you first. What do you like about this move, if anything, and who do you think benefits the most?
Yeah, I like it for the Colts. I think Matt Ryan is a lot better than his numbers looked last year, and I think he was kind of just given a lose-lose situation. That offensive line was really bad in Atlanta. I like Cordarrelle Patterson, but their running back depth chart in general was brutal. Their receiver rotation might have been the worst in the league. So most of those things are switching for the opposite with the move to the Colts, and especially the offensive line, especially the backfield part. I guess the pass catchers could stand to improve, but they could improve them still yet. I mean, we still got the draft to go here. We'll see if they add a little more firepower yet. I still like Paris Campbell a lot, but with his injury history, I'm assuming they'll not count on him to any particular extent. So yeah, Pittman, I think, stands to benefit from the switch to Wentz from Wentz to Matt Ryan. And somebody else is going to benefit too. I guess it could be Hines. I'm not inclined to see it that way. And apparently, the GM, Chris Ballard, is a little bit more partial to Hines than Frank Reich is. And apparently that's something that they kind of struggle over because Reich prefers the better running back be on the field, apparently, which wasn't obvious throughout watching how they used Taylor and Mack and all those guys. But that's what it sounds like out of there. So I don't think it's going to be Hines. I am a Mo Alley Cox fan, so I'm definitely ready to buy in on the hype there. But
you think he stays in Indy? He's going to kill my Granton shares?
Granton's an interesting player too, and they could coexist. I mean, Doyle's out of the picture, so especially if they don't add a big name receiver, they could have two fantasy relevant tight ends, especially since they basically play two different positions.
I like that. Theo.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is what 7 straight years with a different day one starter at quarterback. So they keep the tradition going, but at least they have a veteran who I think he'll be a little less sporadic than Wentz potentially. Wentz's final stats were not like horrific, but I think Ryan gives them a little bit of stability there. They've got a very good offensive line. They have what I think is the best running back in the NFL. And I think that for Michael Pittman, he's just one of those guys. I think he's a wide receiver too, in fantasy. I don't think that I don't see him as a guy who's going to be a wide receiver 1. I think he's a kind of a safe, wide receiver 2 type play. Ryan certainly doesn't hurt him. And what happens at the tight end will be interesting. And they're another team that I think could add a wide receiver in the draft. I think it's a very good wide receiver draft, and I think that the Colts could definitely go that way.
All right. Before we, I know, Theo, you want to pick Mario's brain. Obviously, with the rookie draft, the NFL draft approaching, we want to talk rookies. We want to see the effects. We've saw Malik Willis pro day, so we want to talk about that. Let's do a quick rapid fire. We'll do a quick plug, and then we'll get into the rookies. We saw Leonard Fournette go back to Tampa Bay, which, Theo, we're very happy. I don't know. I know Dan and I have a lot of LF. You're pretty good with LF, no, or not?
Yeah, I have some, and I actually he was a guy that I went out and got on Contenders last year.
Same.
Like I would trade for him
with Brady. So I'm very happy
with Brady, and he was the kind of guy that I was, I put some equity into, and so I was thrilled that this happened. I mean, we go from him potentially ending up in New England, where there was, he visits New England into some horrible timeshare,
killing two other guys' values.
Absolutely. So into him, coming back to Tampa. I'm so happy about it. And also I think that he's just kind of criminally underrated. I posted on Twitter the other day his last 4 seasons, his points per game have just been outstanding. I think last year PPR points per game he was like at 18, and he had two big years before, and then his first year at Tampa was like 10 points a game. But 3 out of the last 4 years he's been very usable, and I think that he's the kind of guy that is going to be a value in redraft again. And I think he's still a value in Dynasty. He's 27. They just gave him a bunch of money. He's going to go out and have a very strong year this year. So I'm very happy about the Leonard Fournette news. What's your expectations for Fournette this year, Mario?
Yeah, I think with Tampa Bay, it's just plug and play with him. And like you said, there was a lot riding on it. The question of where he signed and would have been disaster most other places. But Tampa Bay is the absolute best case scenario for him. And I think in hindsight, he disappointed a lot in Jacksonville after looking so good at LSU, just because at LSU he had the huge offensive line advantage at all times. And he would kind of get a big lane cleared. And then once he's up to speed, he's this 240-pound, really fast guy. And it's tough to tackle a guy like that when he's moving. So with Tampa, their offensive line is so good. He's almost got the same deal there. It's like the lanes are there. And that's why he looks so much better, is he's hitting speeds that he didn't with Jacksonville. And maybe more importantly than any of that, Tom Brady loves him. Tom Brady is a huge fan of Fournette, and you can see it. Like, you could see it early when they started working together. I don't know why. I've never heard of anybody being a big Fournette fan other than Brady, but it's clear that he is.
I like Fournette, man. I've always liked Fournette. I think he fits nicely in that offense. We saw it, and 3 years they signed him. So, like Theo said, if you picked him up late last year to pick him up for a contender, you're drafting him hoping that he ends up back there in Tampa. You're happy. Before we do a quick plug, guys, let's do a quick keep trade cut here. Fournette back in Tampa, Tanyan back in Green Bay. Theo loves that I keep bringing up Tanyan. And A-Rob goes to the Rams. Keep trade cut, Mario. We'll start with you.
I'm optimistic enough for all those guys, I guess. Like Tanyan, I don't know what to make of the injury, but with Adams gone, there's slack there to pick up, and he's probably their wide receiver 2 in function right now, along with Lazard. And Tanyan's a really good athlete. Like, he ran a 4.58 at 236 or something, and he was a receiver at Indiana State. So he could start catching passes right away. And Allen Robinson. I was worried about him fitting in there with Woods and Kupp already on the field, but with Woods out of the way, it's got to be a huge upgrade for Robinson. And you would assume with that third receiver rep that they're going to get a little speed on the field, be it Odell Beckham or Van Jefferson. And as long as that's the case, then it should just be plug and play like last year. And with Robinson, I think not like taking any of Kupp's share, but doing more with what Woods and Beckham tended to get. I'm not assuming a big year from Beckham exactly, probably like a slow start and a lot of distance running on the outside.
Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic for Robinson. I think that this is, the best quarterback he's ever played with.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a coach who's going to know how to use him and a scheme where we've seen multiple receivers have success in it. And playing opposite of an alpha like Cooper Kupp, I think certainly helps him as well. So I think Robinson could have a big bounce back season. Tanyan is a JD favorite, so it's we love talking a little Tanyan. He's interesting. It's like this is always the time in the offseason where you start trying to identify those dirt cheap tight ends, either to get in dynasty or to fill out our best ball rosters. And right now there's like a lot of pretty interesting dirt cheap tight ends. Gerald Everett signs with the Chargers. He's not quite dirt cheap, but I'm interested in him. Tanyan we just touched upon, and I'm interested to see what you both think of Hayden Hurst landing in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Drew Sample is a blocker mostly, so it seems like Hayden Hurst might be running a decent amount of routes there, but I don't personally think he's as good as Uzomah. Like Uzoma's, I guess I'm just higher on Uzomah than most people. Like he's a big, really athletic tight end, and Hurst is a pretty good athlete, but he's not as athletic as Uzomah. So he'll be good, I think. And so far as that role is basically just catching a screen, a check down now and then, and running a bit after the catch. And Hurst can do that. I'm not really expecting a whole lot for fantasy specifically.
Where was he in 2020?
Atlanta, or excuse me, Baltimore, and then
he was in Baltimore, right?
He was in Atlanta 2020 and last year in Baltimore before that, I think.
Did Andrews get hurt in 2020?
Sorry, Hurst filled in and had, I believe it was one big game when with Andrews missed. Hurst actually was drafted before Andrews. Hurst was the first round pick.
Yeah, no, the reason I ask is because he gave you 9 top 12 weeks in 2020 and 11 top 24. So I mean, he's done it, right? And we before they brought in Pitts in Atlanta, you thought, oh, he's getting set up nicely there.
When Hooper went to the Browns, the Falcons traded a second rounder, so I think that was 2 years in Atlanta, and he's going into his third.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
The Uzomah call was an interesting one, though, Mario, to add him in the mix of dirt cheap buys. What's your expectations for him in New York? You think he's going to be a decent part of that offense, or are you more of you just like the talent?
I think he's a good player, but Conklin's a good player too, and moreover, they're actually a little similar to each other. Like Uzomah's more of an athlete, and he's bigger than Conklin, but they both have been functioning in that like 5 yards within the line of scrimmage kind of thing, and most of their production after the catch. So at the very least, I don't see how the Jets are going to have enough points on the board to be running as many 2 tight end formations as it would take to get both of them on the field a lot. So throw in the workload uncertainty between the two of them and probably a bad overall passing game there. I don't know if I expect either of Uzomah or Conklin to do anything there.
Yeah, it's always this time of year is always. I remember last offseason it was the Anthony Ferkster. People are always trying to find tight end values. It's difficult. It's difficult, but we're always trying to identify them.
Parham was another one.
Parham, yep. There was a Parham train. Yep.
All right, we got to give a quick word to our friends over at the FFPC, myffpc.com, guys. I'm super excited because I got to admit, I know the cuts are coming, Theo, March 31st, right, for Dynasty Leagues on the FFPC. Yep. What's the cut down to? Is it 16 or 20?
So it's down to 16, including your defense and kicker.
Okay. And then, guys, to my surprise, as I said, I didn't even know, and I'm excited because I'm dying. I don't know about you, Theo, but I'm dying for a startup, and they are back on the FFPC, the Dynasty startups, starting at $77, guys. Go check them out, man. There's nothing like playing Dynasty on the FFPC. Trust me, it's a totally different game than any other site you're playing on, whether it's MFL. The level of play is awesome. Theo will tell you, man. Theo's shooting like 49 offers a day out there in the FFPC Dino Leagues. Theo, give a little plug for all the fun you're having out there.
I mean, it's a great time. This is a very active time in the year for trades. You're seeing people square up the back end of their roster. And there's always good values this time of year because you have to cut it down to a certain number. Some teams are loaded, some teams are not. So you see those, 5th round picks for running back XYZ, some backup that has a little promise. That kind of trade goes down. There's also orphans for sale. If you want to get a discounted team, pay a little bit less than you would for a Dynasty startup. There's some pretty decent orphan teams right now on both the FFPC and on the Dynasty Depot. So definitely check it out if you're looking to get some Dynasty action. We all play on this site and we like it. We are not so far away from rookie draft season, which is also an exciting time. So, I'm fired up. I'm trying to make moves, trying to get my Dynasty rosters as solid as possible. And if I'm rebuilding, I'm trying to sell off as many parts that are not going to retain value. So this is a great time of year to be a Dynasty player, especially with all this offseason madness.
Yeah, it creates such opportunity. You see it on the screen, guys. The main event, sign up now. $1 million grand prize. That's right, $1 million grand prize. 5.9 million prize pool money. And then, of course, the never too early best ball tournament is still going, guys. $25K for first, $125 buy-in. Just a really nice best ball tournament. Very limited with the seating. Do you remember, Theo, how many? Should probably.
I don't remember the.
They have
the
583 left.
Yeah.
583 spots left, and it's 1,152 teams limited to that little team. So guys, you look at other tournaments, way more teams in there. You can do live or slow drafts. And of course, you've got all the other best balls starting at $5 for the slims, all the way to a $1 kajillion, and all the other formats that they have on the FFPC. And guys, as you know, myffpc.com, if you're not already on the site, you're just hearing this for the first time. We appreciate you guys watching and listening. Make sure you tag us at Go District, and we'll get you a nice little sign-up bonus when you sign up to the site. Guys, let's get into rookies. I know that first segment went way longer than we thought, but I thought, you know what, those are some big moves that happened in the NFL. Let's deep dive for our audience. Let's switch it up. Theo, why don't you start it off? Why don't you start it off with touching on these rookies? So
Mario is someone whose opinion I respect on rookies. I enjoy looking at his rankings, and I just want to take a step back. How would you compare this class as a whole to maybe last year's class and the year before? Would you consider this and we'll take quarterbacks out of the equations, just skill position guys, because we already know it's a pretty down year for quarterbacks. How would you look at this class? Are you intrigued by this class? Do you think it's a decent class, or are you pretty down on it?
I guess for certain, especially in Dynasty, certain people with certain teams might not find in this draft what they need to get where they want to go. But in terms of just kind of a decent selection of talent, of good players, productive players, I think it's pretty good. I tend to see things kind of like optimistically that way, just because I can get like really obsessive about some player and look at something and think like, oh, if they just did this differently with him, this would work out better. And so I can kind of see good case scenarios maybe that I shouldn't. So I think it's a good class, but with that said, even an optimist about this class would have to admit it's not as good as the last couple ones. Certainly the running backs are pretty weak in this class. Like there's some totally good rotational prospects, guys in like the 4th, 5th, 6th round who you think, oh, in that range, I'd really like to draft these guys, but not the stuff of, projected starting lineups, projected snaps. It's a little harder to find that there. And then even at receiver, we've been spoiled the last couple of years. And I guess especially 2 years ago when you had, Jefferson in the first round, even last year with Chase and those crazy guys, there's a little less depth last year, I think, than 2 years ago, even though 2 years ago had the star power. Both of the last two drafts had a lot of star power at receiver. This year, I don't think there is. It's more like there's a lot of really good prospects, but there's certainly no Chase, but I don't think there's any Waddle. There might not even be an Elijah Moore, but I might be higher on Elijah Moore than some people too. So I don't mean that I mean that more as a compliment to Moore than like a criticism of the guys this year.
Do you? I know you're working on your rankings. Do you have a top tier right now?
Actually, for me, the top tier is just Breece Hall. Like he's the running back, the one who's going maybe in the first round, and certainly he's the one running back we can really, I think, assume a 3-down role for in the NFL. I like Kenneth Walker a good amount too, but the pass catching with him is a question, whereas with Hall, I don't think there's anything that's a question at this point. I mean, he has the exact same frame as Cam Akers did coming out of Florida State, but he ran a better 40. He had better production for me anyway in college than Akers. So if Akers is the kind of guy who ends up on a good enough offense and goes, right up into that running back 1 category, Hall could have the same thing happen depending on where he lands. And he's the only running back in this draft who I think is just a clear 3-down player. So he's the top tier for me. And then I have a really big tier 2 group because that's where all those receivers are basically. It's like there's like the top 6 or 7 receivers almost are kind of hard to parse out for me.
Would it be landing spot dependent? Is that how close they are for you right now?
Yeah, and there's also just kind of like these are players who are good at certain things for sure, but we don't know if there's going to be some team that gives them the chance to do that thing that they're good at. Like you might get a Terrace Marshall case where he goes to some team and they have him do everything that he's bad at and nothing that he's good at, and he does terribly. Or you could get an Amon-Ra St. Brown situation where you're like, well, we know he can play the slot, but we don't know if he's going to get a chance. We don't know if they're going to have some other guys getting in his way. We don't know if they're going to hold it against him that he runs a 4.6 and isn't that fast. But we do know that if he gets those slot snaps, he's probably going to be good. He had everything. I guess it took half the season almost, but everything started to fall in his favor, and we saw this is what he can do. But if he was on another team, he wouldn't have ever got that shot in the first place. So for me, it's kind of tough to take a hard stance between Drake London, at least until his pro day. If Drake London has just bombs at his pro day, he could maybe slip out of this tier. But otherwise, for me, it's just Jameson Williams and Chris Olave are your speed guys. They're the ones who can make the big play. They're the ones who can line up outside, take the top off of a defense. Garrett Wilson has speed like that, but I think he's a little more yards after the catch projected than those other two that I mentioned. They more can get open downfield specifically. And then I'm not out on Treylon Burks at all exactly, but for him to take the wide receiver 1 spot and the top prospect spot in this draft, he needed to be a little bit more like A.J. Brown as an athlete and not the 4.55 40. He's still totally good, and he could still be the first receiver picked, could be a first-round pick, but it's just not what it could have been if he had tested better.
You mentioned Olave, Jameson Williams, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, and Treylon Burks. I would say that's your top 5 in no particular order for wide receivers.
Yeah, they're just all in one blob for me.
Now, without looking at for just taking a look at what we know today, who would you consider to be the safest of those 5, and who would you think would be the riskiest of those 5?
Man, I think the most high upside might also be the riskiest, and that might be Drake London, because if he runs like a 4.65 at the USC Pro Day, or his personal Pro Day rather, that would be pretty concerning. But if he runs more like this might be a stupid, impossible thing, but if he somehow runs like a high 4.4, like a 4.48 or something, he all of a sudden goes straight to alpha workhorse wide receiver 1 kind of category for me. But if he tests poorly, you're talking more like a wide receiver 2 kind of category. Still could be a good player, but with these other guys, we have the hopes of like wide receiver 1 totally in play. Like it's not that I'm trying to find a reason to rank Burks 5th out of them or Garrett Wilson 4th out of them. The landing spot will matter a lot. But yeah, I think London has the most at stake on his workout, and he's the one that hasn't done the workout yet, who will still run. Like Jameson Williams won't be able to run because of that ACL tear, but London's going to run and jump, and if he bombs, it could hold a lot of sway over the rest of the receiver order. And if he does really well, the same is true.
Talk about Olave or Garrett Wilson. If you could pick one of the Ohio State wide receivers, which one would you go with?
I like them both a lot, but I prefer Olave just because I think he's a separation creator. I think he's going to get open in the NFL, but I think Wilson's going to get open in the NFL too. And with him, you would say he projects better as a yards after the catch guy than Olave. So, it's like one of those things. I think Olave is probably the better player, but Olave might be more quarterback dependent than Garrett Wilson. Because Garrett Wilson can definitely make yardage after the catch. So if he has a quarterback who can't throw more than 8 yards, he could maybe still be okay. But Chris Olave needs someone who can throw, a 12-yard out.
There's a lot of wide receivers kind of in that next tier. I want to pick your brain on George Pickens. And then I also wanted to see, of all the wide receivers that we expect to go maybe in the late first and second round, kind of after this group of 5, who are the wide receivers you're most intrigued with? Maybe you can start with Pickens just because he's a guy that I'm interested in.
Yeah, I like Pickens still, but to me, he had a slightly disappointing combine. 6'3" is good to see, but he was 195 or something like that, which is pretty skinny for a guy his height. And the 4.47 40 was only decent, in my opinion, for a guy with his density. If you're going to be skinny, I'd really like you to be truly fast. And sometimes 40 times are wrong, so I'm not trying to bury him over this. I still like him as a top 40, top 50 kind of pick. But before the combine, I had hopes of Pickens claiming wide receiver 1. He had really good production, especially that true freshman year at Georgia. So I believe he has the skill to play receiver, starting NFL receiver at a high level. The question for me is, what kind of physical tools does he have to work with? Because I think that goes a long way in determining upside. Right now, I basically worry that he's skinny to the point that it might hold him back a little bit. His frame and his timed athleticism is really close to what Josh Reynolds posted coming out of Texas A&M. So that's kind of concerning because he's okay, but he's certainly no star. And with Pickens, I still hold out some hope that he's a star because that freshman year was just really impressive there.
Wandell Robinson. Shout out to Joey Brown in the chat. Tell us your thoughts on him.
So I was disappointed with him because he was listed as 5'11" on the height weight for Kentucky, and then he measures at 5'8", which that's basically putting you in the slot. Like if you want to be a 5'8" outside receiver, you need to be Tyreek Hill fast. And I don't know if the 4.44 or whatever it was Wandell ran. That might just make him this year's Jalen Darden or something. And I still like Darden, but with guys like them, their projection is more fragile. Like they need more things to go right, fewer things to go wrong. So if Robinson gets a shot on a good team that has slot reps available, I love him in that case. I just worry about him getting that shot in the first place.
David Bell?
Yeah, he's tough because his production is awesome at Purdue, and it seems like he knows how to play receiver, but the workout numbers were pretty brutal at the combine, and this is a pretty strong class, so I think he slides a little bit, and you don't want to count him out, and if he lands on a good team, then you really like him. But, worst case scenario for a guy like his background is there's cases like Tyler Johnson and Kelvin Harmon, guys who were really good in college, and they tested pretty poorly as athletes, and then, they kind of, at the very least, have had a delayed start here.
Yeah, I've heard the Kelvin Harmon, David Bell nightmare scenario. I really would not like to see David Bell go that late in the draft. That would kind of just be a death sentence.
Even Tyler Johnson, I mean, he was awesome in Minnesota, and so I really don't want to count him out because it seems like he can definitely play. The only question is, is he going to be fast enough? Can he twitch, jump quick enough to make his skills show up on the field?
We'll flip the switch. Two faster guys. Sky Moore and Christian Watson seem to be risers right now. A lot of people seem to be getting a little more excited about them. Watson had the big Senior Bowl, and Sky Moore certainly did himself some favors at the combine. What are your thoughts on those two guys? Are those guys that you could see kind of sliding into the back end of a first round in a rookie draft? What are your thoughts on those two guys?
Well, I don't want to count out Christian Watson because he's definitely got wheels and he can jump. That's definitely true. And he was a productive downfield player at North Dakota State, but he was never really a volume player there. And I do worry about him showing up in the low depth of target kind of part of the field. I'm worried that he's going to basically be a better version of Marquez Valdez-Scantling, like a guy who is outside and downfield pretty much every play, and you can't really count on him to make plays in the first 10, 12 yards. But that speed is real. So if he can be a Marquez Valdez-Scantling who catches, 56% of his passes instead of 49, that could be a pretty good player, even if he's kind of limited. With Sky Moore, I can see him getting involved underneath and in the intermediate a lot more easily because he did that at Western Michigan. He was a super productive player there. And he helped serve there, too, against two guys in the NFL. Well, one guy, D. Eskridge, who's already in the NFL. Seahawks reached for him in the second round last year. But also Jaden Reed, who is going to be an NFL receiver from Michigan State next year. He's a good player. Moore kept up with guys like them and put up really great production, had the good workout numbers on a pretty dense frame. So I really like Sky Moore. I think I know he's gotten a little bit of recent hype, but I think it's pretty justified.
Did you guys talk Spiller for
Wheeler?
Okay.
So just getting back to running backs. I want to touch on a couple of these guys, but Breece Hall, is he your 101 in Superflex drafts as well?
Probably, yeah. I like Malik Willis enough. He's my quarterback one. I guess it depends on how bad you need the quarterback there.
So you would have those two guys as like the top tier in a Superflex draft right now?
Probably, yeah.
Then looking at the rest of the running back landscape, I'd like to hear about some guys you like. But one guy you seem to have some trepidation on that I've seen a few people starting to sour on is Isaiah Spiller. He was a guy maybe if we were projecting this draft class a year ago, we might have said he's going to go, pretty high. What are your concerns with him? And is he a player that you think could have, bust factor based on his ADP? current ADP.
For me, Spiller's just in that pretty inclusive group of running backs who it's like, if they got on the field and they got a decent chance to play, you could imagine them doing well. But to get that opportunity, you either need to have, usually anyway, you need to have clear standout talent or draft capital, kind of like, greasing the runway for you, getting you on the field early. And the third case is injuries, of course, can get a guy on the field too. But I think Spiller is pretty much dependent on the injuries to get the kind of opportunity that some of his biggest fans have in mind. And you got to keep in mind with him too, that that's a case where the dynasty Devy community has had their hopes up for years, and you got a lot of prior investments riding on him. And I understand why people don't want to hear bad news about that stuff, but it's like so some of the hype for him is just based on the fact that he was considered kind of like the best next guess at running back 2 years ago that people could make at the time. And just because he might not have added to that resume, and just because other guys might have popped into the picture, won't really change that for people like that. Like they're just kind of still believing what they believed 2 years ago. And Spiller's been a good player at A&M. It's not like he's given any reason for people to sour on him that much. It's just, I think to get that level of running back opportunity that they have in mind, you just got to show more than he has, be it as production sense, where I want specifically more explosiveness and more like really dominant games, ideally against good defenses, or you got to have the rare tools to project the skill set growth with the upside, the big playability. I just don't really see either. So to me, he falls into a group of, like 5 or 6 guys who I think make sense in rounds 3 through 5, but I do not see a standout prospect there.
Is Walker your RB2 in this class?
Yeah, I like him enough. I'm not that sold on him. I think he could be just kind of like another Julius Jones or somebody that we forget about, who has a few big games because he's, he runs hard and he's fast, but don't really see the star power there. It's I worry a little bit about him being kind of like another Darrell Henderson case too, where makes all these big plays as a runner in college. But to make those plays in the NFL, you need to have the same relative speed advantage. And, if you want to make 4.3 flat plays in the NFL, you need to have 4.3 flat speed. And it's a question as to whether Walker translates that big playability to the NFL. So I'm not really truly sold on him either. It's really only Hall that I'm truly sold on.
So a shout out to John McGlynn, our boy in the chat. What he wants to know about Jerome Ford. Would Jerome Ford be a guy you're optimistic on?
I guess I'm more optimistic on him than most people in that. So I was saying, to me, Spiller just kind of lands in this group of guys who they're totally fine. If a team takes them in the mid rounds, you won't fuss about it. You'd say like, hey, sure, why not? And Ford is also one of those guys. Like I don't have a huge difference in my mind between Ford and Spiller. So to most people, that means I'm really high on Ford. But it's more just kind of like I'm sooner agnostic, I guess. It's like I think all these guys could do okay if they get a shot. But yeah, I think Ford is basically as good of a prospect as Spiller, whatever that means to anyone.
Rachaad White would be in that mix of guys for you that are in that sort of mix?
Yeah, I will say he's one that I have trouble figuring out what I think about him because he just doesn't look like that many running backs that I can remember seeing. I really like his production. He's done well as a pass catcher. His workout metrics were totally decent at the combine. So I'm definitely not sour on White, but again, he's just kind of in that group where I have trouble making a strong opinion on him. My strongest positive opinions at running back this year might be Kevin. I barely know his name because I know his numbers more than I know his name. But Kevin Harris from South Carolina.
South Carolina, yep.
Yeah, because he checks the boxes that I look for. Like I prefer to see running backs who are over 220 pounds if possible, have explosive rushing production, and then plus athleticism on heavier than most frames. And Harris checks all those boxes. I think he would have much higher stock right now if he didn't have that back injury that he was trying to play through early last year. If he had 2 years like his 2 years in a row, like the one that he had 2 years ago, people would be talking about him as the running back 2 along with Kenneth Walker. That's what I think anyway, because he had 1,100 yards and really explosive numbers the year before he got hurt. So I like him quite a bit. And I'm less emphatically high on Isaiah Pacheco from Rutgers, but I am curious about him because they had a couple just worst passing games of all time, brutal offensive lines. Some of the worst football tape you'll ever see was at Rutgers when Pacheco was trying to play. So he has ugly numbers at a glance, but I think he might not have had much. I don't know how much more he could have done with how bad things were there. And running the 4.4, whatever he did at 215 in a weak class, that gets me interested.
You mentioned the class is weak. I've asked a number of our guests this question. Where would be your cutoff in a non-superflex draft where you're taking the random 2023 first round pick? Are you trading the 10, like the 10 is the 107, the 108?
So I'll just say I think it's weak at running back, especially in addition to quarterback, I guess. But with that said, yeah, I think if I take a random first round pick for next, I'd seriously think about it if I was any further back than 7 or 8.
Yeah, I think most people have said that.
That seems to be the answer is at 107.
And then we're past the hour mark, but I do want to pick your brain. Your QB1 is Malik Willis. Do you have an NFL comp? I hate doing that because he's different than all these guys. But I will say, how excited are you about him? And is there a QB2 in this class that gets you excited as well?
I was initially way too low on Willis because he had some really ugly games as a passer at Liberty, and that got me, spooked by that. But I think I was wrong to dismiss him initially, and not to make it sound like a slam dunk prospect because he's not. He does have some really rough spots as a passer, but I guess the best case scenario for him that you might think of is Josh Allen, who also had really brutal tape and numbers at Wyoming, especially his final year there. But he had no help really. His offensive line and receivers were bad, and it was a pretty tough defensive conference in the Mountain West at the time. Liberty doesn't have the tough conference excuse, but they certainly have the bad surrounding talent excuse. So Willis had a really bad offensive line, took a lot of sacks, and it's easy to miss this. I missed this first. His rushing production last year was pretty crazy, actually, and it looks good at a glance. But when you remember that the NCAA subtracts sack yardage and adds a carry for every sack that that a quarterback gets, he's actually averaging something almost like 8.5 yards per carry last year instead of the 4.5 that it shows as. And I don't know what his 40 time is or at his particular weight or whatever, but if he's got wheels to work with, and it sure seems like he does, numbers like the rushing numbers that he posted last year make me think he's going to be the second best running quarterback, as in the second most voluminous rushing producer at quarterback after Lamar Jackson. So if that's true, I almost, in fantasy anyway, I don't even care how bad he is as a passer at that point.
You got that right. I mean, if he's anywhere near Lamar Jackson as a rusher, then he's going to be fantasy friendly, as we like to say in the GOAT district. And then I don't want to waste your time here because it doesn't seem like anybody's extremely excited about this tight end class. I'm excited about Trey McBride. Is he your tight end 1?
He is. It's kind of by default a little bit, and especially with Isaiah Likely from Coastal Carolina, he kind of bombed at his pro day, and Jalen Weidermeyer of Texas A&M really bombed at his. So those two were both kind of on the day 2 radar for me, and now they're barely on the draft board, if at all. So the tight end class took a big hit with those two, I think, falling out of the picture. But Trey McBride, I mean, it's not easy to think of past cases like him exactly, but it is safe to say, you don't see production like his very often at all. It's kind of like once every 10 years kind of thing. So depending on his workout numbers are, if he has the kind of speed and quickness to get open in the NFL the same way he did in college, I think he should translate. And, he's not heavy or anything, so he needs to run at least decently for me. But, you see the production at Colorado State, the skill element is beyond any question there.
And just to put some context into McBride, because I know I like how you're able to go back and look at past draft classes. I'll throw out 2 random guys. Cole Kmet, who was close to the tight end 1, drafted as the tight end 1, but I'm not sure if he was your tight end 1 2 years ago. Cole Kmet, and then Pat Freiermuth, who would have been a tight end 1 in a normal year, but he happened to be in the same year as Kyle Pitts. How would you compare McBride to those 2 guys? Do you think that's a reasonable expectation that he could be somewhere in between them, or is he below those guys?
Well, Cole Kmet's a huge lumbering tight end, so I like McBride being more. Let's see, 246 at 6'4". I don't know. Maybe he could be like was Owen Daniels or somebody like that, kind of like that. Like
I love that comp.
Like
that.
A guy who's running around a lot with the ball, kind of tight end.
Yeah, we'll take the next Owen Daniels and tight end premium, won't we, JD?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's not getting me unexcited. That's great. JD, is there any prospects you want to get Mario on the record on right now?
Sorry guys, I'm on mute. I keep throwing it out there, and I'm thinking I'm talking and I'm on mute there. No, I mean he hit on a lot of them. The one I wanted to hear the most was Rachaad White. Unfortunately, one of my most owned rookies on the FFPC. Unfortunately, we'll see how that plays out.
If you squint hard enough, Mario, if you squint, can you see a little David Johnson with Rachaad White?
He's not that heavy, but you could use him some of the same ways, specifically as the route running aspect. So that's part of what I mean why I like White, but I can't quite tell what to think about him, because I'm like, man, if he was just 10 pounds heavier, I'd say David Johnson, but I don't know what to say. But he seems like he's a good player, and he does the same kind of tricks,
Yeah.
Actually, Zamir White's a guy that Theo, Dan, and I fight over in every best ball that we enter together, and he keeps going earlier because we want to one-up each other and get him before the other does. John McGlynn, our buddy, friend of the show, asking about Zamir White shooting up draft boards.
He's for me, he's in that group again with Spiller and Ford, and there's other guys that are in that group too that I'm forgetting. I guess maybe the South Dakota State guy is up there after having
Robinson's in there.
I'm actually lower on Robinson than most people, but
okay.
The other thing I feel like I should mention is I don't think the 40 times for the running backs are right this year. I think they're all wrong at the combine. I think they're all too fast.
New turf was the theory.
Well, the other thing is
Mario's frozen,
which is the opposite of how it always works and how it worked with the receivers. The receivers, we were told, Christian Watson ran a 4.28, and then they changed it to a 4.36. With the running backs, they said, hey, Breece Hall ran a 4.44, which is already very good. And then they're like, actually, it's a 4.38. And so did everybody else got a 0.06 subtracted or something like that. So I think Robinson ran a 4.6. I think Kyron Williams ran a 4.72. There's a bunch of other cases. I think the 40 times are all wrong. So I don't think White is as fast as the 40 time implies. But if I'm wrong about that, if he is, a low 4.4 guy who can run on a 215 frame, who can run the way he did at Georgia, that should play in the NFL. That there's no reason that should not be useful to some team who needs to get some carries assigned to somebody.
Theo, you had your asking for a friend type of question. I'm going to ask mine as I'm sitting here trying to wheel and deal. I'm trying to score DeAndre Hopkins. I have 0 shares. He's not someone I've been buying in the previous years, but I feel like right now he could be a pretty nice buy in Dynasty. A 23 first and a 23 second. That's too much, right, for Hopkins?
I would try to move a 22.
I already did that. Did that, and he just got back to me. And he's a guy that doesn't use his picks; he trades them. So he's saying he's looking for 23s, and he already has 2 offers for 23 first. And I'm pretty much top 2 the last few years, so he knows mine's going to be late.
I would, unless you're absolutely going to win the league with the addition of D Hops, and you're going to get cash out of it, then I would struggle making that trade. I like trying to trade for D Hops right now. I agree with you. I think he's like a 3rd round redraft type guy. So he might be he's pretty cheap based on his age in Dynasty, but I think that could burn you. If he gets hurt and a couple of the other guys get hurt, even if it's a contender, contenders become non-playoff teams pretty quickly, especially in non-deep, Dynasty formats. So. What do you think? What do you think, Mario? Is that something you would do, or?
So I don't handle pick trades like that as much as you guys, and I don't mean to pretend to know a whole lot about it, but I think I lean a little bit more with Theo. I'm concerned about Hopkins' durability situation. First of all, he's he's been getting nicked up quite a bit lately, and he is reaching that age where you're like, oh man, I don't want to just assume he's going to bounce back fine, at least not as quick as he used to. So adding that second pick maybe makes me a little more concerned, but even a bad season for Hopkins is still, assuming he doesn't get hurt, a bad season for Hopkins is still 100+ catches. So in PPR, I don't think he can hurt you as far as to projection.
All right, let's do a quick, guys. Remember to use district, the code district on Underdog. You guys have to be on Underdog. If you're not already on there, the best mobile app to draft best balls. If you're into hockey, they've got the Zamboni right now for the playoffs. If you're into basketball, they've got a basketball. They've got tons of sports on there, baseball draft starting. So go check out Underdog. Use the draft or the code district. You'll get up to $100 matched in your account when you sign up using the code. And stay tuned to the channel, man. I know, Theo, you haven't jumped in yet, but we've done Dan and I jumped on for a couple. We did one that was planned, and one was like a late Saturday night. Both of us, after a couple of beers, jumped on and did a draft. So that was a fun one. Go check that out, guys. But Mario, man, always bring in the goodness. We love having you on, man, especially like Theo said, the timing to get you on today was just priceless, man.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I really like hanging out with you guys, and I appreciate all the generous words, and it's all likewise to you too.
I appreciate that as well. And yeah, we'd love to have you back on sometime in the summer, like we did last year, and talk a little more redraft.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd definitely like to do that.
100%. Awesome. And shout out to Wheeler in the chat. You guys are awesome, man. John McGlynn, we appreciate you joining us tonight. Joey. And we had Matt in here as well, and a few others. So we appreciate you guys tuning in, guys. Smash the like, smash the subscribe. Make sure you check out Mario Rotowire at the remind me, buddy. I keep forgetting.
Posting Scout.
The Posting Scout. I don't know why I keep forgetting posting. The Posting Scout. Pretty simple handle and a must follow, guys.
And we have a couple of great guests lined up the next couple of weeks. We have Dwayne McFarland coming back on the pod again. Dwayne's great. We have Jax Falcone of the Undroppables, has been a fantastic guest here on the GOAT District multiple times now. And then we have Abib Agbatoba coming back on, the two-time football guys champion. We'll get a high-stakes perspective on some of these off-season moves. And Abib is a fantastic guest as well. This will be, I believe, his third time on the GOAT District. So stick with us. If you love the show with Mario tonight, you love some of our previous shows, expect more great things. We've got a lot of content coming heading into the draft. And then we have some great stuff planned the week of rookie drafts as well. So I know that we're in that jam-packed week between the NFL draft and our rookie drafts. JD and I and Dan are talking about some ideas for that week, but we're going to have some really good guests as well.
Yeah, man, we're going to spoil you guys as much as we can. We're doing it. Theo keeps bringing in the guests. We keep bringing in the goodness. Listen to Wheeler, man. Smash the like, guys. It's a small thing. I know it sounds stupid and you hear it all the time, but it really helps the show. It helps the show spread the goodness to all the peeps out there. If you want to get those stacks, guys, you're in Dynasty. Maybe you don't have Tua. Maybe you don't have Hill. Go get yourself a stack on Underdog, MyFFPC. Go draft yourself a new Dynasty, man, on MyFFPC right now. Tons of fun on both those sites. We appreciate you guys. Check out Veridian Global for all your GOAT gear, including this sweet JT shirt. We appreciate Mario. Theo, always a blast with you, brother. You're the man. Dan, hope you're rocking out right now, and we'll check you all later.
GOAT District, the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text. That trash offer's the best. You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. It's the And I always be trading. And I always be trading. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
That was an awesome show again, Mario. That was really, really fun. I love being able to pick your brains on these prospects, man. You're like a machine with this shit.
We covered a lot of shit there. We covered a lot of shit there in 118. That's for sure.
Yeah, sorry if I dragged anything out too much.
No, man, not at all, dude. We appreciate all of it.
Do you ever podcast with John? Are we're still live, JD?
Are we really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right. We'll turn it. All right.
I was gonna say that we've had a couple of guys